Now, as someone who's played the cello in my much more youthful days and is ineffectively trying to resurrect past glory, I fully appreciate my guest's love of the violin and the way he uses that instrument in his compositions. And you can literally hear it cascading through, through every release he's done, from the Room for Dream EP to the epic music and soundtrack for his film Omoiyari. He's an epic multi-hyphenate songwriter, singer, multi-instrumentalist, filmmaker, father and husband, who's used his creativity, his energy, and really his whole being to produce art that really, kind of makes you pay attention through the sort of the exquisiteness and purity of the songwriting and its humanity. There have been so many things that have fascinated me, intrigued me, and filled me with respect and admiration, not least the ever-present authenticity in his work, but also how the work conjures up such strong emotions in me. Even though I find myself getting emotional at the smallest things these days, it's getting quite ridiculous, frankly. And even more so with some of the horrific acts of prejudice, greed, and narcissism that structurally pervade our society. There's still only a few songwriters that can do this. And now he's back with what I think is musically his most diverse, and that's really sort of saying something. To follow up the stunning Omoiyari, and it's called Cantos, and I'm really excited to hear about it all and to delve into some of the mindset topics that I've noticed present in his work. So it's a big welcome to Koru Dil Ikibashi, otherwise known as Kishi Bashi. Hey, welcome. Really great to see you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much. That was a great
That's
introduction.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So I'm as far as Cantos goes, I'm really interested that about how, now that it's we're about a sort of week after it's been released, how you were feeling in the how in the run up to it, and then sort of post release, kind of what sort of feelings are running through you.
Lots of feelings. I mean, I delivered the album in February, so
Yeah,
it's waiting a lot. I created a couple music videos for it. I did,
yeah.
I got really into the filmmaking aspect of music videos, like
Mm.
animation, and then now I'm rehearsing with my band and the band who I recorded with actually. So it's great. It's really great to be back with great live musicians,
Yeah,
like pumping these tracks out because it's a party album,
it is, isn't
in a
it?
way.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
really fun, and I'm
yeah.
absolutely enjoying it. And I don't know, I try not to psych myself out because what I'm really excited is to literally start the tour and then I can just relax.
Yeah. I guess I guess sort of having the the musicians around you and the I suppose like the kind of energy that
Oh
they sort
yeah,
of give off as well is
yeah,
kind of
they're
cool, that.
yeah, they're actually British, so they're from
Oh wow.
the drummer, yeah, the drummer, bass player, and the guitar player. Friends I met in Europe,
Right.
and then and that's who I recorded with. And they're young, they're in their early 20s, mid
Yeah.
20s, so they're very excited and
Yeah.
they have a lot of energy and they're absolutely fantastic musicians. So it's I don't know, it's I'm not spring chicken, but it's good to have lad energy,
Oh,
in
yeah, that sort of
in the
youthful
band.
energy, it sort of drags you along, doesn't it? I remember, what was it, about April this year? I went around like a couple of weeks in Europe, following a couple of bands, one from San Diego, another one from
Mm.
Austin, that were sort of touring the UK and Europe together. And I kind of knew some of them beforehand, and it was, it was just so great. I mean, I guess I was very aware of kind of dynamics, and things like that. But fortunately, it was just perfect. But yes, it's. I mean, I think they had like one day off in. I mean, it was probably about a 3 week tour, one day off. Pretty grueling.
That's pretty that's pretty grueling. I mean, it's so expensive to tour, so
Yeah,
you have to kind of pack it in,
yeah.
if you can. Unfortunately,
I think I saw some of the routes, with some of the the towns that they were playing in, particularly sort of Germany and Czech
Mhm.
Republic. Kind of like, okay, why are we
Yeah.
doing that route? It looks that's
Are you talking about my
completely
tour? Or
weird.
are you talking about the tour that you followed?
This tour I was on, yeah, this tour
Oh
that
yeah,
I
yeah,
was on, yeah.
yeah. Just the
But
booking agent. Sometimes they're just like, well, we want to go to Prague, but only these dates are available, and it's
yeah,
so you just kind of have
exactly.
to zigzag and a little bit.
So maybe if you know, sort of talking about the album
Mhm.
and you know, kind of some what was sort of perhaps going on in your life and some of the influences that really you know kind of created the album, the sort of the genesis of it, I guess.
Well, I mean, because I did Omoiyari, which is a documentary and a very
Yeah.
about serious subject matter and like social justice,
Mm.
that took about like 5 years of my life. You know,
It was
making the
incredible.
soundtrack and an album, and now the movie, the documentary is now Emmy nominated, which we're excited about.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of the film, I really just didn't feel I was creating all this music. Meanwhile, you know, just as an outlet,
Mm.
because I'm not just all about. I like to have fun and I like funky music, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I was always like creating music, but I didn't feel right like celebrating anything until I finished this like documentary that I've been
Totally.
working on. And once we finished that, you know, it got released last year
Mm.
on Paramount Plus and MTV Docs. And then once that was over, I felt I could move on to the next artistic iteration. And so a lot of these songs that I had were, I think I just wanted to take another, just a different angle, because
Mm.
it was honestly, to me, it was inspiring, like because I like beats and I like you know, rhythm and stuff like that. And then as far as subject matter goes, I think, you know, a lot of I tried to channel a lot of the the kind of paranoia that was happening with artists and AI, and kind of
Yeah.
questioning their value in
Mm.
society, you know. And I think I did some explorations and thinking about that. And um, so that's the gist of it. Is that I just went into a new direction because I felt excited about it musically.
Yeah. I mean, I guess after the yeah, the sort of the intensity of Omoiyari, um, that I mean, how did that take a lot out of you, you know, in sort of
Mm.
creating and executing that?
Uh, I mean, it was. I used to make albums every 2 years, and this one
Yeah.
took like
It
this was
took
a
till
5 year
5.
project. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, Omoiyari, the album was released in 2019, and
Mm.
so this it's been 5 years since I had
Mm.
a full new album. I had an EP in between, but and there's also that thing COVID. I don't know if you know about it, but that happened. So
Yeah.
that was like I put a pause on a lot of stuff.
Got a few people
So
talking about it.
oh yeah, so glad to hear you guys have heard about it over there.
Yes.
So, but I think, you know, I definitely matured because now
Mm.
I'm like very empathetic. I have a lot of omoyari,
Yeah.
and especially about identity, and you know, about identity, and also about my personal identity. I've grown a lot to the point where I'm very comfortable talking about it,
Right.
and I want to pursue a lot of projects in that arena. But I think musically, yeah, it's very acoustic and orchestral, and I think I wanted to do something where I just wanted to do a lot of this electronic music that I've always like loved, you know.
Yeah.
So I kind of went back into this other realm because I love it.
It's interesting, isn't it? When I mean, I sort of found myself, I guess, probably from around 2000. I think probably about when I became more aware of it, around about 2014, sort of onwards, about more kind of issues around my own sort of identity and how I was changing. And I guess I'd sort of always grown up with probably through my parents of that generation. I mean, they were born in like 1930s, and it was almost a much more kind of linear life for them, and that I think that was sort of passed through to me to an extent. But I was living in this world that was changing very very quickly, and it was yeah probably about 2014 I started to recognize that I was sort of changing, and it was a little bit uncomfortable at the time, because you get used to this I guess sort of perception of yourself, of who you are, what you are. And I realized that was kind of wrong. That so there was a bit of a kind of opening up, if you will, you know, of my mind, and sort of getting through the discomfort, you know, to a place like, you know, like you said, you know, where you're kind of okay to talk about it.
Mhm.
It was
I
a
mean,
weird sort of thing.
yeah, I think a lot's happened. I mean, I think the world is constantly changing, you know. So
Mm,
there's always discussions and always adjustments
yeah.
and eye-opening reckonings, you know. But I think especially now, I feel as a minority person, you know,
Mm,
in the Western world, I feel very comfortable in America, much more comfortable. And I think that means
mm,
that basically it's in America at least, in parts of Europe, I think people are just having the conversation that multiculturalism is kind of here to stay, and and there's a value to it,
Yeah.
to having a diverse society.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and to me, it's like exciting that that it's actually like changing, and there's less. Obviously, there is conflict,
Yeah.
with some conservative minded people, but I think
Yeah.
otherwise, otherwise, I think it's I think we're on the right side of history in that, like,
Mm,
we are headed towards a beautiful, like, diverse future.
yeah. I mean, I guess you only have to sort of think about when you collaborate with somebody, doesn't matter who it is, that there's an immediate diversity there because they have a different opinion, they have different
Yeah,
experiences that they've grown up with, and different things that they gravitate towards, and that's a kind of beautiful thing when you get that.
yeah,
Everybody's got to be the same. It's kind of it's the
yeah. I feel like
point.
music is a great place to do that. It's easy. It's easiest
Yeah,
because it's just about because you're not even speaking in a verbal language. You're speaking in
yeah,
a soulful language. So you can communicate with
yeah,
music, which I always thought is much more fluid,
yeah.
than
And
other mediums.
I think as well that we've had this, I guess the sort of music industry has been, um, I think, to sort of some extent, has been kind of like sort of hamstrung by the idea of genres, which sort of puts musicians and artists into sort of boxes that make it easy for the industry to market and
You
so
mean like
forth.
you mean journalists? You mean music journalists?
Basically, yes. Basically, yes. Yeah. What sort of categories they say? We're not going to cover that, because we only sort of cover, I don't know, kind of metal or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. But I think those are just sort of so restrictive, and I feel now that there are many more musicians that are and artists that are kind of just bringing in more influences than even kind of 10 years ago. I mean, there's some musicians that have been doing it for years, but it seems to be
yeah. I
more
mean,
now.
yeah. I think, like, I have an 18-year-old daughter, and she's
Mm.
like, I'm like, "What are you listening to?" And she's like, "I'm really into Radiohead." I'm like, "What?" you know, or she had like a
Yeah,
Deftones shirt, and I think, and
yeah.
then she likes Juice World, and I don't know. It's like she likes hip hop and stuff like that, and I just realized that when you're young and in this kind of social media world of TikTok, it doesn't. I don't think
Mm.
genres are really like genre binding categorization.
Great.
Are not as strong with young kids these days.
Yeah, yeah.
They just like what they like,
What they
and
like.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that's, to me, that's exciting. But it
that's
was
got to be a
actually
good
cool.
thing.
And she was like, "So what was Radiohead like back in your day?" I'm like, because she was listening to Creep, and I was like, "Well, Creep was like the first song I heard, and I remember I saw them on MTV. I said this was cool, but then like OK Computer, when that came out, that
Yeah,
like changed. That it was like the favorite album of everybody at the
yeah,
time. And she
yeah.
was like, "Oh, that's interesting because that's like my favorite album." And so we kind
It's
of,
I mean that's so interesting that you say that. So my wife's nieces are. I mean the youngest is 17. The eldest is like 21, 22. Both into Radiohead, exactly the same, and kind of like some of the '90s, like Slow Dive,
Mhm.
kind of bands like that, really sort of taking those sort of, and some of the the like the Bikini Kills and what have you, and it's
Yeah.
just sort of interesting thinking back to that. It's like, wow, I kind of grew up with some of that, you know.
Yeah, and it's good that I can, like, connect musically to her,
Yeah,
and like,
exactly. Yeah,
I always try to play cool music for her, but I think if it's good, I think if it connects with somebody back then, there's a good chance that it will connect with a human being, because we're not, ultimately, we're not, they're not different. Like,
yeah,
we're the same as, like, somebody 100 years ago physiologically. We're human
yeah.
beings, so, I think, yeah, if it's good, there's a good chance that people would like it.
So obviously you got into the violin sort of quite early, around about what, about sort of 7, 8 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I was a Suzuki kid, which is like this
Yeah,
method, this like kind of mass brainwashing kind of like violin,
yeah.
it's almost fascist violin training camp.
Oh god.
Maybe good fascist, whatever that means. Like a
Yeah.
very methodical, and like everybody plays in a group, kind of thing. And then
Right.
and so I learned it. Yeah, so I started that when I was 7, and then I was pretty serious up through high school.
Mm,
in like classical violin, and then I got
yeah.
into more like jazz improvisation like around then, and that's when I started playing with bands and got into jazz violin.
Right. You had a slightly different pattern. I mean, in some ways very similar. I started playing the cello about when I was about 8,
Mm.
and kind of did all my exams and things like that. Practical was great. I used to hate the theory. Theory I hated. I just well,
I don't think we got
uh,
any theory. There was no theory taught in in
no.
Suzuki violin.
I wish I hadn't had theory. It completely sort of turned me off, and I think at the time I didn't feel
Are you
because
talking about
I'm
like
an only
solfege and like that kind of stuff? You're
yeah.
talking about
It,
harmony theory?
harmonies, kind of sort of song composition, harmonies,
Oh, like
chord
sonata allegro
progressions,
form, like that kind of stuff.
things like that. It's like, oh my god, you're
Yeah.
doing your exams, and it just didn't. Exam formats didn't work for me, but that was the only way that you could sort of get through it. So I scraped through to the minimum, got the minimum that I
Wait,
could.
what year are you talking about? How old are you when you're
I
learning
was so
solfege? What
I'm
theory?
56. I'm 56 now. So I was doing this. I think I passed my last exam, the last exam, which was the grade 8 in, I think I was 16, so that would have been 84.
Because I think in American classical music, they don't harmony. None of that is like taught until college, like university
Right.
level. Everything is
Yeah.
just all about performance, like technique.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed I played in orchestras, and I really kind of enjoyed that. And it was a sort of weird thing because like my kind of nature, especially when I was a kid, was very shy. And I wonder, almost like playing the cello, that you can kind of hide behind it to a certain extent. I always think, could I have ever been a
like
singer? I don't think
you
I
can
could.
physically hide behind a cello. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I was obviously a lot smaller, playing an adult size instrument. I could just sort of I felt a little bit protected. But I think if I'd have been if I'd have singing a bit, as a sort of
Mhm.
lead singer, I don't think I could have done that. Would have been
Yeah,
too naked.
I think I agree with you. Like I was playing violin, I wasn't a singer until mid after college, really.
Mm,
I was pretty much about violin, and that I was hiding behind the violin as my instrument, as my identity, musical identity.
yeah,
So I think like even like my actual identity, like what are you? I'm a violinist. You know,
yeah.
and so I think
I,
you
I
probably do that. Yeah.
I also had this thing where I just wanted to not stand out. And of
Mm.
course, like carrying a massive cello around, you can't do anything but
You're like a target.
stand out. And it was. I mean, I think, and I always, I kind of felt that I was sort of being, sort of pushed into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you liked it. When you
Yeah,
started, right? And there's moments when it's like very exciting, and I don't know. I mean, I think I start if you start when you're 6 or 7. I don't know. You probably enjoy it, and at some
yeah,
point when it gets frustrating when it's really academic.
yes,
And I
yeah.
think, but in high school had I played a lot of chamber music, like string
Okay,
quartets, like
yeah,
Debussy and Ravel, and like got
yeah.
Shostakovich eighth,
Oh, amazing.
but just beyond my ability, but our abilities, but we loved it, and I think that kind of cultivated that love for the repertoire,
Mm,
because our teacher was mad at us for trying
right,
to play, but we're just reading, you know what I mean? Just
right.
reading music, beautiful music. So uh, I think
But
that's how I stayed connected to classical music. Yeah.
and what was your teacher? Kind of like sort of inspirational for you? Were they
No,
or not?
I mean she's a total bitch. She was I could say that because later in life I was like, oh, nostalgic about. I
Yeah.
can't can't believe I just said that, but she's probably not listening. She might not be alive. But she was really really mean,
Oh,
and she had a
really?
lot of
Yeah,
issues,
yeah,
and she was probably taking it out on her students, and she was like up the Heifetz school,
yeah,
and she was just really nasty most of like half the time. She
yeah.
made everybody in the studio cry, and then I don't know. She told me I would not be a professional violinist. It's
Wow,
like you're kind of worthless. And then
wow.
but she made me. I have good intonation. I think because she was very, really, very, very strict. You
Yeah.
know, um, so
I
not
remember
inspirational.
I remember my music teacher was a guy, and he was really old school, very similar. It sounds very similar. He was nasty. He was violent. I used to
Violin. Oh my god.
be so scared. I've seen him
Yeah.
literally like on the piano. People, kids playing the piano, and he would take the lid and wrap it down on their fingers as people were
Oh my
playing,
god.
throwing chairs
Jesus.
across him. He was just like he was just
That's
insane.
okay, that's not like her, but she was mean. I think she, like, had a stick, but it's a different
Yeah,
we're of a different era, I mean, we
yeah,
we are of the same era where
yeah.
they could abuse children, back then.
Back
So
then, there was definitely some of that going on. So
so
I mean, getting told that you're sort of worthless. I mean, was that a sort of something that said, "Oh no, fuck it, I'm going to carry on."
I think for some people, it would've crushed them to the point that they
Yeah.
just quit music and have a negative association with violin
Mm,
or art instruments, but for me, I love music so much that I was listening
yeah.
to a lot of, like, great music, especially, like, chamber music and, like, the repertoires has, like, so much great, beautiful music. There's a reason why people still play it today,
Yeah.
hundreds of years later, and I think that was enough to just, I think I knew enough about, like, what I liked that
Yeah.
I proceeded. I take it back. She was mean at times, but she wasn't that bad. I don't think she wasn't violent or anything like that. So,
Times
uh,
of humor. I think that yeah, that I
yeah,
remember this that
she
there
was
were
very strict. That's all I remember. Yeah.
yeah, kind of like these sort of extremes of strictness, and
Mhm.
then this bizarrely bizarre humor that would sort of come out that just used to make me laugh. But I was just thinking, how can you be laughing at this guy? He's a monster. He's awful.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh
I'm
my.
actually kind of grateful. She did give me a lot of good bow technique, and she
Yeah.
was basically the best teacher in town in the area.
Mm,
And
mm,
but she did have that lineage from like her teacher studied with Heifetz, something like that. And
yeah.
her career never took off for her in New York, so she came down and married somebody, and then wasn't
Right.
miserable, and
Oh my. Oh
so and
my.
she told us about it. So, uh, but then she married, then she divorced him and married her high school sweetheart. And I think she was a lot happier
Oh wow.
with that.
Okay.
And then
So
yeah,
yeah, so that was the cause
um,
of it, really.
yeah. But I never. I think in my area, maybe because of the negativity, I just never ever I associate the negativity I associated with that classical music world. I think I just never pursued orchestral. Like I didn't want to
Mm,
go that orchestral musician route. I was
yeah.
definitely not soloist level. I wasn't going to like
Yeah.
Juilliard in high school. So I didn't know about any other thing about um, like improvisation, or I didn't know that you could make a living playing in
Yeah.
bands and
Yeah.
doing different things. So until much later.
So what was then your sort of journey like from that sort of stage into into jazz and then into the kind of the composition, your own sort of composition?
Well, in a nutshell, I think I discovered like Stefan Grappelli,
Mm,
like the great like jazz violinist. Like I had a CD like in high school, and then I was like, "What is this?"
yeah,
He's like a virtuoso, but like
absolutely.
make pretty much making it all up. And so I was like, I want to do that, and I started kind of make. There was one book available in the U.S. called Jazz Violin by Matt Glazer,
Mm,
and I took that and I'm basically playing around the transcriptions. These are all like transcriptions of Grappelli stuff. So I started messing around with that, and then in college, I went to Cornell University for like 2 years studying electrical engineering.
yeah,
But then I started like I was really into playing like jamming with people. This is
right.
like in the early mid '90s, where there's like acoustic, like
Yeah,
there's a bunch of folk groups like Dave Matthews Band who had a
yeah, yeah,
violinist, and like
yeah,
Rusted Root, like that kind of stuff. It was just like
yeah.
I really enjoyed playing just jamming with people, and
Mm,
so I started doing that, and I started like realizing that I was kind of there wasn't anybody. It was kind of a unique thing, so I kind of stuck out a little bit in the Ithaca, New York folk scene.
yeah.
Um, and ultimately, I just transferred to Berklee College of Music after that, and then
Mm,
I went to the only place where you could study improvisation on violin, in college
right.
at the time, which was in Boston. And so I went to study with Matt Glazer, the guy who wrote the book.
Yeah. Oh wow.
It was
So
really
that kind of like improvisation style. What do you think? was it about that kind of drew you to it?
I think it works perfectly on the violin and string instruments.
Yeah.
It's just it's hard to do. It's fun. It's so much fun to
Mm,
play. Even to now, I do it for fun, occasionally.
yeah.
And there's also a lineage like of swing and like swing fiddle and like
Mm,
bluegrass and like these. There's like a whole like uh, you know there's a whole yeah the tradition
mm,
that basically I was completely unaware of.
right.
That I knew that I always thought the only legitimate music is classical music as a violinist, not
Yeah, yeah.
realizing that there's like all this awesome music, that really has been kind of cast aside in formal worlds, and
Yeah.
I think,
That's mind-blowing, isn't it, discovering
yeah,
that?
yeah, and then I was like, okay, well, I really enjoy doing it. And then
Mm,
so I just really wanted to learn how to improvise. And so when I went to Berkeley, I was just exposed to just high levels of jazz players like all the time, and I was just practicing a
mm,
lot, just transcribing and doing all these things. And then after that, I moved to New York and I started playing in bands, and I
mm.
think I realized that I was like pretty decent, like a violinist who could play in a electrical setting, you know
Yeah.
and so that's kind of kept that up alongside but just being pragmatic, I did get a film scoring degree at
Mm,
Berkeley. So I learned the craft of scoring to film, and I studied composition and stuff like that just so I could do that on
wow.
the side. And I also enjoyed composing.
Of those 2, I can't think of a word, but those 2 things, so the, kind of film scoring and then the kind of improvisation, I mean, what what of those 2, what do you think you kinda need to be successful at both those, let's call them disciplines, it's probably not the right word, but
You probably need dedication to one of them, and that's why I was never really successful at either one of them. Um, I like composition. So to me, I don't know. I think I remember being like, I was doing my film scoring degree, and my final project, I was like super excited. It's just like a mock film score, and
Yeah.
I got the coolest jazz musicians in the school, and I made this like awesome like jazz piece underscore.
Mm.
And then my teacher was just like, "This is really the music is cool, but this is awful."
Oh,
Because
really?
it doesn't work with the film. It's like no director is gonna ever hire you because it's too busy.
Wow.
It's too exciting. It takes away from
Right.
like what's going on in the screen. And then he's like, "Listen, this is the advice I'm gonna give you. You're a good composer. However, I think you should just work on your music. Sounds like you
Mm.
really just wanted. You should be doing original music.
Yeah.
And then you always have this skill. You can come back to do this later in life." And I kind of took that advice
Right.
because he was a working composer, in the area, and he's like still my mentor, later in.
Mm.
And he was just like, "This is, I really think you should just work on music. Sounds like this is what you're into." So I just kind of, I did, I did that on the side. I did commercial jingles while I lived in New York, and it was always like a moneymaker. So
Yeah.
I always balanced between violin and this, but my main gigs were mostly violin.
Yeah.
Just playing violin. I played in the circus. I played in like, in New York, and I played in
Wow.
like circus band, like it was like a Cirque du Soleil kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had one in New York, and I don't know. I think that's like I got good at it enough that felt I felt that there was a voice for violin like in the
Mm.
electric world. Like it's
Mm.
beautiful. It's got a very like romantic sound.
Mm.
And so people love it. People love violin and strings, So
Yeah.
so I kind of did that, and also kept in mind that I wanted to do at some point. Well, I'll tell you the progression is basically I was in a
Yeah.
rock band, with my original music. Like it was kind of jazzy. It's called Jupiter One.
Jupiter One. Yeah.
Yeah, in New York, and we did this for like several years with mixed success. And then, but it wasn't very orchestral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had a little violin in it, but it was more. It's like a laddish,
Yes.
rock
Okay.
band.
Right. Right.
Synthesizers and synth
Yeah.
rock. And then um, it wasn't until we hit the end of the band where I was trying to write new music with the violin, which is what
Mm.
I started realizing I can make original music with the violin and loops. The loops really help to kind of create a live
Yeah.
orchestral sound
Yeah.
that I could actually perform live. And then that's when I was like, because I'd seen like Andrew Bird before. I was a fan of Andrew Bird, so I was like,
Yeah.
he has this very orchestral sound, which I thought was super cool.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, and so long story short, old band kind of dissolved, and then I was just kind of forced to reinvent myself as a songwriter, and I chose to
Right.
do it with an orchestral style. That's Kishi Bashi.
Do you think you would have done that without that? If the band had carried on, do you think you would have made that break?
You mean if we were ended like successful? That was like I'm the singer of
Yeah.
Jupiter One and not Kishi Bashi.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's hard to
mm,
say, isn't it?
it's hard to say.
Time and place, isn't it, and all that.
Well, I think one of the reasons why we weren't successful is we're just trying to be successful, which is I
Right.
didn't realize I didn't realize that that's detriment, you
Yeah.
know, to create to an artistic to true artistic expression, you know,
Yeah.
is when you're trying to please
Trying
or
to
when you
for
don't,
yeah. Oh, it's
yeah.
of course.
And so I think when when I started Kishibashi, it was like a concerted effort. However, it was still more about because I'm one person
Mm.
making an album. There's less pressure than say if you're four people are dependent on this
Yeah.
new album. It's just one person. If it didn't take off, it's like whatever. I could just make another album or I don't know whatever.
Mm.
You know, not tour. But if there's like four people, they're like, what are we gonna do? How are
Yeah.
we gonna pay our rent? Or you know, and so I think I was able to really focus on this like vision that I had, and that in turn strengthened my debut album, which is still like pretty popular
Yeah.
today.
Absolutely. I mean, were you influenced by? Um, I mean, the one band that sort of comes to mind is Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
it's,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. That and
big fan.
yeah. So my first album and first couple albums are very influential. Like a lot of acoustic guitars in there,
Yeah,
a lot of synthesizers.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, ELO. I love Pink Floyd. Kind of like Pink Floyd and ELO were kind of my visions for early
yeah,
Kishibashi.
mm,
And sonically, you know, production
yeah,
wise, I didn't have too many guitars. I wanted to make basically I wanted to take electric guitars out of the sound and
yeah,
then fill it up with like samples and like violin sounds, and that's kind of the approach I took.
yeah. I'm also I'm interested in the you know, kind of, I guess, sort of band dynamics where you got you know, a kind of group of people that are either songwriting together or just you know, however it sort of works for them versus you know, more solo artists who perhaps bring
Mhm.
in you know, individual collaborators for certain songs or whatever. Even when you you know, get to the stage where you're producing and sort of engineering the you know, the record, where you have those sort of different personalities, and it's just made me think how you know, I don't know, like how those dynamics are just so important to getting the right result.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a incredible magic in
Yeah,
collaboration, you know, and I kind of
yeah,
miss that with my band,
mm,
my old band, you know. But that having been said, you know, if you're a band and there's like a you want to make orchestral music, like what's the bass player gonna play? Like what's the drummer gonna play? You know,
yeah,
and to be kind of you're also you're tethered to that
yes,
sound, you know. And so I think there's an incredible amount of freedom to being a solo
yeah,
artist. And you can instantly reinvent yourself. You can choose not to have
yeah,
drums at all or a bass part at all,
yeah.
or you can do whatever you want. And you know, I think yeah, I think that's the difference. And I can also just focus on my vision, and I don't have to like it's not album by committee.
Yeah, yeah,
It can be
absolutely.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess you know you sort of made a name for yourself for this kind of reinvention and and doing you know, having you know, different influences, different directions, and I guess yeah, but you can control that. You know, so
Yeah, I can yeah,
you're
but
in
I'm also
control of that.
sensitive about it, you know, and like I have to ask my
Yeah,
friends, what do you think about this track? Or you know, I'll throw it around a little bit,
yeah,
you know, because I don't have anybody to bounce it off of most of the time. It's
of
usually my
course,
wife,
yeah.
my wife, or you know, maybe my kids
How
if
do
she's
you
willing to listen.
how do you respond? Because I like sometimes, and I wonder if musicians do have a sort of different mindset. I you know sometimes you know if I've created I've started do music writing and do all my own kind of graphic design now.
Mm.
And so if sometimes like I sort of have an idea or a draft and sort of then or I work on something, I get a little bit precious about it.
Oh yeah.
And then when you share it with
I know the
something, it's
feeling.
like, oh no, this is mine. It's right.
Oh, you mean when you get a critique, you just like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah, it's it can crush you, you know.
yeah.
I think when I was a film composer, the one thing I learned is not that non-attachment, you know.
Mm,
So
it's a good
basically,
thing to have.
you write this work, you work on this music, you're like, what do you think? And the director's like, I don't know. And then
Yeah,
instantly it crushes your soul, and then you kind of but you get used to that. So I'm careful about sharing stuff because I
yeah,
know it'll like hurt me. At
yeah.
the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I'm like super paranoid all the time.
All the time. Yeah,
I
no,
rarely share stuff.
yeah. And if you do, it's to people you completely trust as well. And
Yeah.
and thinking about what you were saying earlier, I remember when you were saying that that the way that it was put to you that maybe concentrate on your songwriting and come back to it, you know, at
Mhm.
some stage in the future. And I think that sometimes it's about how things are framed, isn't it? And how things are if somebody just says, this is shit, you need to kind of rewrite it. That's crushing. But if
Yeah,
there's some, and not all people are good at sort of being, positive about something when they critique. Sometimes it's the way that it's put across.
it's yeah, if you can't handle criticism, then yeah, you need to probably learn how to handle it, and then
How to handle
and
it.
then yeah, or you're gonna have a really bitter life,
I
you know,
know, I
as an
know
artist.
exactly.
So, but I think
Still learning.
yeah, as a professional, somebody who's just been a freelancer and then worked for people, and now I work for myself. It's kind of like I've seen the game. I know how to navigate it, so I'm not in that situation where I'm like crushed. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
the only time I'd be crushed if my music just doesn't stick, and you know.
Mm,
But now I put it. Now I'm in a very envious, very privileged position of I put an album out, and most of the time everybody's excited about it. At least my
yeah,
fans, you know. So
absolutely.
so I'm like very very happy about it. But I do put in a lot of hours into
Yeah,
making sure that I'm 100% happy with it. And at the end of the day, it's just one album in my career. So it's like
yeah.
I put it out. If it doesn't stick, I can always make another one. So I keep that in mind. And then
Mm,
I feel like artists are always like, you're always evolving, and they're just like little snapshots of your artistic um, output, throughout your
yeah.
life. It's not going to be your masterpiece. You're not going to,
I
you
guess
don't
it's
know,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's your
That's
own
liberating.
evolution, isn't it? As a
Yeah.
as an artist and as a person.
Yeah, it's like it's these are all like conversations, like you spend
Yeah,
your day, let's say you walk around, you go about your day, you have a conversation with this person, then a conversation with this person, and a conversation with this person, and these are all like things that you do.
yeah,
Some Sometimes one of these might be it might be very impactful for somebody or
yeah,
yourself or profound,
yeah.
and other times it's not, and so you don't,
Mm,
but you don't, oftentimes you don't know that until it's actually happening, so I think as an artist to know to when I figured out that you can't just you sometimes you just put it out and move on,
yeah.
with your life. And that's to when I learned that, it was really liberating and actually made me a lot happier, less stressed out.
Would you say you're a perfectionist?
Yeah, I'm a perfectionist, but I'm also like realistic about deadlines.
Realistic? Yeah.
But I think I learned it from Sondre Lerche, who's like this singer songwriter.
Mm,
When I toured with him, and he has a lot of albums. Same with like Regina Spektor too. When I toured
yeah,
with her, and Kevin of Montreal. All these people are like my early mentors,
yeah.
where they're just like they're in the job is to just release albums. You
Mm,
release an album, you tour, you release an album, and that's your career. And
mm,
so you just there's not time to be hung up over it. And I think
yeah,
sometimes there's like artists who like release an incredible debut album, and then they take 5 years to release, and there's so much anticipation, and then the second one doesn't do well, and then they go into depression, and it's like that's the end. That's the last you hear of them.
I'm kind of I'm just thinking of the Stone Roses when you mention that.
Oh, are they like that?
They brought out an album. I think it was in 1989, and it was astonishing. It was so good, so
Yeah.
good. And then they took must be 5 years, 6 years to bring
Yeah.
out and it was the first album's called the Stone Roses. It was so successful.
Mhm. I think I know that one, yeah.
Um, yeah,
Well,
and
here's the thing is that, if you think about your debut album, you haven't just spent 2 years, you spent probably, like, 5 years developing it,
yeah,
touring, build maybe an EP in there,
yeah,
and then your record label's like, "You need to release a follow-up in 2 years," you know? In addition to doing a world tour, touring
yes,
your ass off, you need to come up with, like, just a good
just
body
as
of work,
good, if not better. Yeah,
in 6 months, and
it's
it's a lot of
crazy.
pressure and like that. That's why the sophomoric effort is always like, it's a
Yeah,
slump. It could be a slump, you know. So I
it's
think that's
that.
yeah.
I mean, that's a huge amount of pressure, isn't it? Huge
Yeah.
amount of pressure.
So I think like it's always just being realistic that I'm just gonna put kind of stay focused conceptually, and
Yeah,
then just do the best you can. And but also like as soon as you start touring and you have pockets of time, you should be like collecting new ideas, so that you can have another
ready for
album,
the next. Yeah,
yeah, in time to like start working on another album. So I'm like starting, I'll be starting soon.
I guess that this is sort of where where your creativity, but also your curiosity, sort of
Mhm.
comes in, for that kind of exploration and kind of again sort of openness for new
Yeah, you have to be
ideas that
excited about
inspire you. Yeah,
excited about it. Like I like to find new instruments, like guitar, new synthesizer sounds, or like
yeah,
or new music. But also like it's so overwhelming to start a tour and like start release an album. So it's like maybe I'll tour a little bit and then in the spring I'm just gonna start working on new ideas.
yeah. What about how do you feel as you sort of progress through your career about sort of taking risks in your
Um,
in your work?
I think for me as a solo artist, it's actually I have the benefit of being able to take a risk.
Yeah,
Because if a band takes a risk, then critics will be they're just like all over the place.
yeah,
But a solo artist is like I don't know. I feel like has the ability to be more eclectic.
yeah.
If I want to do a folk album, I mean, if I did a rap album or something, I don't know if you know, I know my
We heard it here
limitations. You know
first.
what I mean? So, or an opera album or something. I don't know. Like it's
Yeah,
if my risks. Yeah, I feel like I'm extremely free to do whatever I want.
yeah.
But I'm also like I have to like as long as I like it. So I'll make a demo. I'll try something. Maybe I'll even try
Mm,
rapping, whatever. And I like make a demo. So I have like one song called "Make Believe" that on this track where I'm actually kind of rapping, anyways. But
yeah,
these are
yeah,
things where I like explore things. I'll make a demo, and then I'll work on it until like I feel like I'm not embarrassed about it.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and to share, or to even, and then I'll go into the studio and then see if I like it after that with a band. See if it still is cool,
yeah.
and maybe not. So it's a
Have
process.
you, have you sort of had ideas or things that really kind of speak to you where you think I'd love to do that, but I don't know if it's a bit of a bridge too far for the fans.
I mean, I went kind of bluegrassy in my EP,
Mm,
after
yeah.
Omoiyari. I have an immigrant EP,
Yes.
um, and
I remember it.
that was like that was my COVID album. And then I think, um, I don't know. I feel like I like to keep changing things, and people
Yeah.
like that, And
Yeah.
then
I agree.
uh, I don't mind trying new things, but I am super picky and like
Mm,
about what I think is hot enough. So
yeah.
if I'm not like psyched about the demos that I'm making, then it's like it's gonna be hard for me to. I feel like it's gonna be like I'll just keep different genres.
Mm,
Um, Also, like when I'm coming up with my ideas, I usually like to do a lot of different like styles of things. I like to do whatever I want, and then often when I have to make an album, when I know that like I want to do it, then that's when I'll really focus and uh, look at the body of like demos I've created, and then kind of
Mm,
start to find a sound, and then I'll create, usually like fill up more in that area when I know I have a, you know, thing,
yeah.
a direction.
I think it's you know, as we sort of get older, I think it's interesting how taking risks, how in some parts of our life we become more risk averse.
Mm.
You know, in lots of ways, maybe the you know just the sort of the physical things that we do become less risk averse, but in other elements, it's almost like, well, do you know what? I don't care anymore. You know, I went like I went through like a large part of my life sort of worrying about what people would think, and that was like it was like really debilitating. And then I just got to a stage. I mean, I haven't lost it entirely, but I have lost a lot of it, and now I really, you know, it's kind of like I just sort of don't care.
Well,
But
yeah, that's what they say about older people. I mean, I'm like, what, I'm like almost you're as old as you, and it's like,
yeah,
yeah, at some point, I think something happens in your brain where you just like, you're like, I've lived a good life, and um, I just don't care as much anymore. That's why, that's
yeah,
I don't care about people's problems as much, or even my own problems. You know, like when you're
yeah.
younger, I think that's why when older people are more, just tend to become more conservative. You know,
Yes,
oftentimes, and
you're
the,
right.
you know, it's because you're just used, something happens where you're just like, you know what you think is a problem is really not a problem to me.
It's not. I
You know,
know.
and
It's these sort of tricks that you kind of brain plays to try and protect you, I guess. You
yeah,
know,
as you
it's like, oh, you
prepare for
can't
your
do
own
that.
mortality, you know,
Yes.
because your brain is just like, it kind of,
Uh,
yeah, it probably fixes your brain into thinking that you're not going to live, you know, forever, so we're going to prepare your brain into a
yeah.
smooth sailing off into the sunset kind of feeling, you know. That's why all old people, my parents are like, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, I'm not gonna live forever, you know, and they're just like already
Yeah.
they're like ready to die, which is like, they're totally healthy, but they're not afraid of death. That's what I'm saying. And I think like
Yeah.
they just assume that it's it's around the corner, you know. And I'm like, oh my
Wow.
god, I'm just starting to think about that, you know, since I'm like half midway point, you know. So it's like,
But before we get
yeah.
there, we've got a big tour coming up, which
Oh yeah, before I
we just
die,
said
yeah.
before we started that you got you sort of rehearsing now, and then the tour starts tomorrow. Actually, which will be
Yeah,
the
tour starts
3rd of
tomorrow,
September.
US tour. Yeah, and then
Yeah,
European tour, and then probably go
amazing.
over to Asia maybe once, Australia, probably
Wow,
in the spring.
how exciting! How are you feeling? Excited
Mm, I'll be excited when I can relax on
when you can
tour,
relax with it. Yeah,
not on tour. Right now, it's just a whirlwind,
yeah.
trying to get everything together. Just get the bus moving. Just get it moving. You know?
Just get it moving, and then you're off, and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Karu, thanks so much.
Thanks.
It's been
Yeah.
great to talk to you. I know you got to get off and go to rehearsals now. So
Yeah.
thanks so much for spending time with us. Anyways,
Yeah.
I
Of
really
course. That's
appreciate
great. Yeah. It's cool talking to you.